Hello everyone, my name's Stephen Murray and I'm the host of The Gift of Giving. Thank you for joining us today, and for those of you who are tuning in for the first time, in this program we feature and focus on foundations, non-profits and 501c3s in the state of Nevada and all those organizations who are making our world a better and brighter place. And this week, I'm very pleased to have as our guest Ted Hartwell. He's the Executive Director of the Nevada Problem on Gambling. Welcome to the program, Ted, and thank you for taking time out of your schedule to join us.
Thank you so much for having me.
I understand that March is Gamblers Awareness Month, so it's most opportune that you're here today, and we'll talk about that later in the program. But right now, I'd like to find out, what's the mission of the organization and when was it founded?
So the Nevada Council on Problem Gambling is a statewide nonprofit that has a mission of generating awareness, promoting education, and advocating for quality treatment of problem gambling in the state of Nevada. And as an affiliate of the National Council on Problem Gambling, we are completely neutral on the subject of legalized gambling. We take no position for or against it, and that enables us to work with stakeholders across the entire spectrum to help address the issue of problem gambling for that small percentage of people who do suffer from it.
So if you're part of a national program, do they lay down guidelines as to how you need to run your organization, or are you given a fair amount of fluidity given the fact that we're in the gambling capital of the world?
Well, there is a fair amount of fluidity for each state affiliate council to operate because the funding mechanisms are different, the missions may be slightly different, but all of us are completely neutral on the subject of legalized gambling. That's very important because industry is an important partner in this process in terms of addressing this issue with their own employees and helping connect patrons who may exhibit signs and symptoms within their organization so that they can connect those individuals to help.
Gotcha. And what was the catalyst that made you join Nevada Problem Gambling?
So that would be related to my own gambling problem. I was a research scientist at the Desert Research Institute I just retired from that position about 3 months ago, but for 32 years I was in that position, and a little over 16 years ago I developed my own gambling problem that got seriously out of control. And because of my position, I had the potential not only to destroy myself and impact my family, but I was one of that select group of individuals who had the potential even to impact this country's national security. Fortunately, that potential was not realized, but it does give one a sense of how serious a public health issue this can be. One person can affect quite a few others in their orbit. And as I got into recovery from that illness myself, I became very interested in the idea of public advocacy and awareness on this issue. I first started volunteering with the council probably about 12 years ago. 4 or 5 years later, they hired me as a consultant to help develop some of their programs. And as I say, 3 months ago, I retired from my long research position to become executive director when the previous executive director retired after 27 years at the helm.
Wow. I always love it when we have guests on the program that have traveled down that road and turn the corner and then turn around and give back. And there's nothing like somebody who's been through that experience to advocate and help others. So it's really terrific that you're actually doing that job and undertaking executive director, because that's no small feat, not in Las Vegas for sure. I think there's a fine line, I suspect, and you'll let us know, I'm sure. There's a fine line between gambling for fun and when you cross over that line. And what symptoms are there that let us know if we're getting close to that line?
That's a great question
to look out for.
Great question, and it is a fine line, and you often don't notice it, especially if you're in the midst of it when you've crossed over it. But there are some signs and symptoms that you can be aware of and watch out for yourself. For example, one of the most common ones is chasing losses. So if you have set that limit of what you think you can afford to spend, and you lose that money, and all of a sudden you find yourself obsessed with trying to win that back rather than letting that go and having your next gambling event be a completely separate event, that's one indication it could be transitioning into an unhealthy form of gambling. If you are lying to loved ones about the amount of time or money you're spending on gambling, if you find yourself unable to consistently keep to those limits of time or money that you set for yourself, if you are using money that you would normally need for other living expenses to gamble, or using gambling as a way to try and get more money that you need for living expenses that you don't have. Those are all some very common signs of symptoms that you may be traveling down a very bumpy road.
Yes. When people reach out to you, excuse me, what are the most common ones? Do most of them reach out and say, gosh, I'm spending our family's budget? Or does it concern them more that they're lying to their family, or they're going after their losses instead of letting it go? Is there a priority list, or?
Well, all of the above.
Excuse me.
When the problem gambling helpline was first formed over a couple decades ago, a lot of the callers to it were often family members reaching out for somebody else that they realized was struggling. But that has changed over the years, where I would say now the majority of people who do call the helpline on a national basis are the individuals who are suffering themselves or think they may have a gambling problem and are wondering, how do I know if I've got a problem? And so the people that call in, though, the reasons for calling in can be very varied. From, I've been spending my whole paycheck every month, every time I go to the casino, even though I don't intend to. Or, as you mentioned, I've been lying to my spouse for over a year now. She doesn't know that we're in debt tens of thousands of dollars because I've hidden it in certain ways. I want to stop this, but I can't seem to do it. Or sometimes they're calling because they've been given an ultimatum by a family member. You're going to get help or this relationship is over, something like that. So everyone along that spectrum, up into and including people who are at the literal end of their rope and they are suicidal over this issue and in immediate crisis and in need of help.
Wow. Gosh, it's horrifying to think that people actually get to the suicidal point of a gambling issue, when it's nice that you've got help is out there.
Right.
You alluded to something that a lot of your calls come from family members, and that segues neatly into my next question, because the problems you've addressed, that's how we can look at ourselves to see if we have a gambling problem. If you're married to somebody, are there any signs that you can point to where the family member can say, hey, my other half's got a gambling problem, or I suspect them of having a gambling problem, which is why they're calling you? What are the signs that they should look out for that might give them an indication their partners?
Yes, there are some signs that might be there, but there is a reason we call this the hidden addiction, because unfortunately it is often very easy for the person with the problem to find various ways to hide that the gambling is happening or hide that debt, and it can sometimes go on for years before the family may become aware of it. But things like unexplained absences, lying about the amount of time one intends to spend gambling. If things are going missing in the home, it's not unusual for things to be pawned, for the person to get cash to go and gamble, always with the intent, of course, that they're going to win money and they're going to be able to get that thing back maybe before anybody notices. And we see in the more severe cases, of course, people engaging in criminal activity where they might be either stealing from their own families or from their businesses if they are in control of the finances, where there might be some embezzlement occurring. Again, always with the intent, when it gets to that point, that they're going to replace this before anybody finds out. It's not to live a lavish, exciting lifestyle. That's not what addiction to gambling is about.
Yes. And I would suspect too that there's because of where we live, there's a youth issue with gambling. How do parents watch out for signs of youth gambling, and how serious a problem is it with youth, and do you have any programs tailored for youth?
That's an excellent question, and I'm so glad you asked it, because most people do not think of youth when we talk about people with a gambling problem. But in fact, Nevada's one prevalent study, which is now more than 20 years old, showed that at least 2% of Nevada adolescents are struggling with a gambling problem before they're out of high school. And we suspect that because this country has experienced a significant growth in legalized gambling over the past 5 years, especially around sports wagering, that more and more children are viewing the commercials on TV about sports betting apps. More are engaging in betting even within their own family. I was somebody who learned to gamble in my family as a child. I suspect my father didn't see any harm in it. Either friendly bets between us and games, or my father introduced me to a poker game when I was fairly young, and horse racing and all these other things. And we know today that the earlier that you engage in any type of gambling activity as a child, the greater the risk of developing a problem later on in life, even though it may not happen in adolescence. So the Nevada Council actually has several programs that are focused on youth awareness that we administer in some of the high schools and even middle schools here, to help kids understand why it's an adult activity, why they should delay their own participation until they're adults, help them realize that the impact can be not only financial, but impact their relationship with their friends and their family. And it's non-judgmental about gambling itself. It simply recognizes some of the reasons why it's inadvisable to do it in youth. I've also recently developed a student-athlete gambling awareness program for students in the high schools here, because student athletes are a very high-risk population for both participating in gambling activities and developing gambling problems. We've seen some of the stories in the news at the collegiate and professional level about players getting into trouble with gambling, but usually those activities started long before they were of legal age to start gambling.
Wow. We're just going to take a little short break here. Please stay with us. We're going to go for a sponsorship break. We'll be back in a few moments.
I started my career in financial services during the Great Recession, one of the worst markets we've ever been through. That challenging period was full of uncertainty, but every challenging period has its opportunities. Investing should never be like gambling. Your financial future is far more important. No one knows what the future holds, but here at Lucia Capital Group, our bucket strategy can help you prepare for whatever lies ahead. I'm Joshua Dowden. I've been working with clients for more than 16 years, and I can help you as well. My office is right here in the heart of Summerlin, just north of Charleston Boulevard. Don't let the stock market determine the quality of your retirement. Call me today for a free consultation at 702-508-6421. That's 702-508-6421.
Thank you for coming back and joining us today with our program. And I'd like to thank Joshua Dowden and Lucia Capital Group for all the financial assistance they've given me with their retirement, and for being a sponsor on this program. And welcome back Ted Hartwell from Nevada Council on Problem Gambling. So I'd like to talk a little bit about support groups now in the second section. How important do you consider support groups to be?
I think they can be extremely important, even though there's a kind of a stigma associated with this particular disorder, and people are often tremendously dismayed about this idea of talking about this addiction in a group. I think it's incredibly important from the standpoint of recognizing that you are not alone in this, because when you are in, I think, a gambling addiction in particular, you feel so incredibly alone, and you think nobody can possibly understand what you're going through. And to discover that there is a support group of people from all walks of life who you may have nothing in common with, except they have experienced this exact same problem, and who can be a resource to help you understand it and share things that have worked for them in avoiding gambling again. That can be tremendously supportive.
And now, do you have support groups? If people reach out to you, do you refer them to different support groups, or Do you have support groups in your own organization?
So the one thing we do not do at the Nevada Council on Problem Gambling is provide treatment. We are a referral resource for all types of treatment, from self-help to professional treatment. In the case of referrals that are made through the Problem Gambling Helpline, Gamblers Anonymous, of course, is always mentioned. That's a 12-step group, very much like Alcoholics Anonymous. We have over 100 meetings a week here in the Las Vegas Valley alone. So any time between about 7 a.m. and 9 p.m. at night, you can find an in-person meeting where you can just show up, whether it's your first time or 100th time, and participate in a meeting. And it's important to know that in the Las Vegas area, we have the added benefit that almost all of those meetings are open meetings. So if you want to take somebody to support you, or if you want to support somebody, especially at that first meeting, which it's incredibly difficult, you can show up and declare yourself as a guest. You're only allowed to listen and not to share or ask questions, but that can be a huge step in helping somebody find something. It's also important to know that for each one of me, we tend to affect quite a few other people in our lives, and so we do have similar support groups for family members or friends who are affected by somebody else's gambling, and that's called Gam-Anon.
Yes.
Either of those organizations you can Google online or come to our website and click on our resource locator and find where those next meetings are occurring.
Okay, so I'm glad you mentioned Gamblers Anonymous and Gam-Anon, because I'm aware of those organizations and I wondered how you differed. And you've given a perfect answer. You'll refer people to Gamblers Anonymous and Gam-Anon.
That's correct.
When you say people reach out to you about treatment, do you recommend either going for personal treatment as opposed to a support group, or do you recommend both? Or
another question.
Distinction?
So when somebody calls that helpline number, they will get the call center that services that for Nevada, and they have all the information from professional treatment and the organizations and individuals in the state of Nevada who have that certification to treat professionally, and also all the information on Gamblers Anonymous meetings, because there's not really a one-size-fits-all approach for treating this. Depending on where that person is in their journey, they may say, I just want a one-on-one therapist, or I don't want to see a therapist. I don't want it on my insurance. I don't want it to show up. Where can I go? Gamblers Anonymous may be the route for me. That anonymity can be very important, especially early on in somebody's recovery. And so all of those options will be made available to the person, and they will even be sent materials if they would like more print materials just to learn more about this in the organizations that are here in the state.
Okay. And if people reach out to your helpline, as it relates to support groups, do you actually say, this will really help you, I can guarantee you it'll help you, or you just say, might I suggest? I mean,
yes.
Some people that they can respond negatively if they feel they're pushed in a certain direction, if you know what I'm saying.
Right, and while we don't staff the phone line directly, no one is ever pushed into or even said I can guarantee it will work, because you can't guarantee anything will work necessarily. But you can certainly the people who answer that call center are very well trained. They have a clinical background. They are trained in assessing for level of suicidality, which is very important. If you need to connect that person or bring someone to them while they are on the phone with you. So they listen with a very compassionate ear, and they give that person all the options. Oftentimes that person will not engage much that first time, but they might call back the next week, right? Sure. And so they track also the people who call back looking for help, because it's a process coming to the realization you've got this problem that you may not be able to deal with on your own.
But if you've got 100 meetings a week here in the Las Vegas area, how does the helpline help them get to the right, or how do you recommend a meeting when you've got 100 of them?
So
is it geographical location, or
they may, if that person is in significant crisis, they may recommend that the person get to a meeting as soon as possible. They will say, here are the 10 meetings that are happening through the rest of today, the addresses, how to get there, and you can also find that online. If that person is looking for professional treatment, they will give them all of those resources. And it's very important to know, lest I forget, that in the state of Nevada, professional treatment for problem gambling is entirely free. If that individual has no insurance or any other way to pay, that will be provided through our state problem gambling fund through 4 state providers who take advantage of that fund.
That's a good piece of information to know. Certainly
important.
Good. And still on the subject of support groups, and we were talking in the last section about youth gambling. Do you have special support groups for youth, or there's what we have for the youth?
Often the youth will attend Gamma-Non meetings with other family members. There is a version called Gamma Teen. I'm not aware, though, of any that currently exist in the state of Nevada. So we do have some online providers that kind of crossover with gaming addiction. And when I say gaming, I literally mean video game addiction. A lot of today's video games have gambling-like elements in them, and so we see kids transitioning from that into gambling activities. And some of those online providers will do remote treatment for both of those things. We do not currently have a provider in Nevada specifically to address problems for adolescents, so that is a gap we need to address.
Yeah. Something for the future for you to consider.
Absolutely.
Something else to add to your burden there.
Absolutely.
Gamblers Awareness Month, March.
Yes.
What's the significance of that, and
so
what does it accomplish?
Problem Gambling Awareness Month is a national grassroots event that is supported through the National Council on Problem Gambling, and councils all across the United States and even affiliated organizations and partners will kind of up their game during the month of March to increase general awareness, whether it's in the schools, in community organizations, places like, for example, Foundation for Recovery. Many of our partners are substance use disorder treatment facilities, and we ask them to participate in what's called a screening day as part of that month. I know I scooped a question there probably, but and so on that day, organizations across the United States, whether they are medical related or any place that's asking questions, for example, about smoking use, substance use. Do you feel safe in the home? We ask them to add a question or two about gambling to help illuminate the issue that people might otherwise not even bring up in that situation unless it were directly asked. Or even if they're uncomfortable answering in the affirmative to those questions, if their doctor or provider asks that question, all of a sudden they know this is a real thing. This thing they have been experiencing is a real thing and it's not confined to them, and that may urge them to go out and seek information on how to get help.
I'd like to talk a little bit more about Screening Day when we get back, because I think it's very important. So we'll be back within a few moments. We're just going to take a quick sponsorship break. Please stay with us.
Introducing Pacific Coast Capital, your partner in finance. We provide financing for your business. Speed, flexibility, and creativity are the foundation of our service. We'll help you navigate through change and opportunities. Our 90-plus years of experience ensures quick turnaround on loan decisions. Ride the wave to prosperity with us. Ready for new funding? Visit our website today at pacificcoastcap.com.
Welcome back, and I'd like to thank Pacific Coast Capital for being a sponsor of this program and allowing it to happen. And we'd like to welcome back our special guest from Nevada Problem Gambling. Thank you for staying with us. And we finished the last segment on Screening Day, and I'd like to follow up on that a little bit, if I may. What does that actually entail? What's involved in Screening Day itself?
So we reach out to our community partners, many of whom are in the medical or substance use realm, to encourage them to devote a day to including screening materials, which we can provide them with, within their intake process or interview process for any of their clients. We even encourage them to engage these questions with their staff members, not only their clients, just to see what conversations might evolve or get people thinking. So if people are interested in finding out how to become involved, or they're interested in what those screenings are, they can reach out to us directly by phone or visit our website to find out more.
And so does one have to make an appointment?
Don't have to make an appointment. We can provide them a link that has materials that they can download from the site that describes the process, and then that provider can decide how they would like to implement it in a way that makes the most sense for them.
Oh, so it doesn't actually happen. It's not where people go and like have a flu shot or something like that.
That's correct. They are doing that internally within their own organization. We're providing them the information and materials to do it. We're not going out to their organization. It's to empower them with the idea and hope that many of them will incorporate this as a regular screening tool as opposed to just once a year.
Yes. Oh, that would be fantastic if that happens. Yes. Are you having much of a success rate with that? Do you know at this point in time?
It's something that's new for us, actually. We have not participated in it greatly in the past, so we're curious to see how it will work this year. But over the past several years, I've become much more active in bringing awareness to, for example, UNLV's new medical school, groups like Roseman Medical Center, getting their students and staff trained on this so that our up-and-coming doctors and physicians will recognize this as an issue that needs to be screened for amongst these other things that we already ask for. So we will ask for some reporting back on the outcomes, and hopefully people will let us know how it went, and we'll gauge success based on that.
I'd like to talk about getting the feedback that you get from people that you've helped. I'm sure there are people like yourself that you give back to the cause now, so you get those success stories. Do you have many people that have traveled that road and, like yourself, have decided they're going to go back and join your organization?
Absolutely. In fact, all of our four very, our small but mighty staff at the council have traveled that path, and all are involved in public advocacy in some way or another themselves. And just this past year, we started a program, specifically to engage members of the recovery community who would like to kind of go that extra mile, who are not as worried about anonymity in their personal lives, and who would like to do some public advocacy and awareness on this issue at various levels that are comfortable for them. And so we will train them about the organization, what our mission is. Some of them go and they talk to, for example, intensive outpatient programs, people who are getting into recovery from substances, to give them an education about gambling so it doesn't become a problem later on. Some of us will give staff briefings again to staff members of this organization, but it gives that extra outlet, and we actually give them a small stipend for each presentation to recognize them for that service. So it's not entirely volunteer, but pretty close.
Yes. You said you've only got 4 staff members?
We only have 4 staff members, and also a remote consultant who I believe you've met out in, he lives out in the Pahrump area, but he travels around to our rural areas. So we've got 4.5 people.
Do you have volunteer or help as well, other than your 4.5 paid staff?
They are all paid staff, and so our volunteers will help us staff community events, or if they want to take that additional training level and go out and give presentations in the schools or other areas, we absolutely support that endeavor.
And are most of your volunteers, are they recovering gamblers?
Most of our volunteers are in recovery themselves, but if people have been affected by somebody else's gambling, or this is just a subject they would like to learn more about and help us promote this in the communities, we're absolutely open to training them in the same types of information.
Do you get many volunteers who have been affected because their parents have gambled or their loved ones, their spouses have gambled.
Absolutely.
And they now want to help because you helped their spouse or their child or parent.
Absolutely.
You get a lot of
very
volunteers from
touching
there.
stories about people who were pulled back from the edge of suicide, which is a very real thing with this illness, unfortunately, or people who just thought that they'd never be able to stop, or their spouse would never to be able to stop. So we have lots of anecdotes about marriages being saved. Unfortunately, with gambling, it's the type of addiction that can leave a lifelong impact on the family financially,
Yes.
depending on the amount of damage that's been done and at what age that occurs within the family, right?
Yes.
So it's often necessary for the family to engage in some therapeutic processes. They can be very angry, of course. Some of the angriest people are those that have been affected by somebody else's gambling problem, and to hasten the healing process for everybody, it's important for the family to get engaged in their own therapeutic process.
Yes, and the anger part, I would suspect, can be pretty hefty if
Yes.
somebody thinks their home's almost been paid off and then they found that it's leaned on up to the hilt, and yes,
That's right.
pretty hectic and awful. How does your organization actually get funded? Because I would suspect you don't have many fundraisers, do you?
We don't have a lot of fundraisers, but we've got some fantastic community partners within the gaming industry especially. In fact, 75% of our funding comes from private contributions, and most of those are members of the gaming industry. So folks
surprising.
like Caesars, MGM, Boyd Gaming, these are all incredible contributors to the organization. It doesn't come with any sort of quid pro quo. It recognizes their commitment to this issue and our mission in the state of Nevada, because it doesn't help them in any way, shape, or form to promote somebody's gambling problem, especially somebody who's going to burn themselves out over a couple-year period and never come back and be someone who is not a walking advertisement for their business, and neither are their families. It behooves us all to continue to develop practices, especially in the prevention realm, so that people, again, can recognize these signs and symptoms and know where to turn long before it becomes a serious problem, and then they can stay engaged. So they supply about 75% of our funding, and about 25% of our funding comes through a state grant that we apply for every couple years, each biennium, and that is primarily for prevention and awareness activities in the state.
Wow. Boy, you're doing an amazing job there, an amazing job. And it's very encouraging to know that the gaming industry is with you, because I would have thought the gaming industry, you'd be a thorn in their side, but clearly you're not.
No,
that's
not at all.
heartwarming to hear.
There are sometimes disagreements over how some programs are purveyed, and there's always an encouragement to improve on programs that they may have, but they are an important partner.
Well, we're Americans. We're not all meant to think the same. We're meant to have different opinions and
That's
things.
right.
So it's all good. Would you like to share with us information as to how people can reach out to you, how they can learn more about the screening day, when it's actually going to be held? Do you have a website and phone number that you can give us?
Absolutely. So our website at the Nevada Council is whenthefunstops.org or nevadacouncil.org. Our main number is 702-369-9740, and that will connect you directly to our office if you are interested in learning more about screening day. But for immediate assistance or information, I encourage people to call the Problem Gambling Helpline, which is 1-800-GAMBLER. That's staffed 24/7. It's completely free and confidential, and will work in any state in the United States and U.S. territories.
And just to reiterate, you said that if people actually go for treatment, the treatment's free as well?
Treatment in the state of Nevada at the four
Yes.
organizations that take advantage of the State Problem Gambling Fund is entirely free, and that's at every level, whether it's one-on-one counseling, intensive outpatient program, or even residential treatment in rural and northern Nevada can be provided free of charge for gambling.
Hopefully, I'm sure that's going to help out a lot of
Yes.
hopefully our viewers will take note of that and appreciate that information.
And I should mention to you, Stephen, that not only for the person with a gambling problem, but treatment and therapy is free for anybody affected by somebody else's gambling problem.
Oh,
so
wow.
that's very important to know as well.
Very, very important and very key. And that's wonderful that there's people out there willing to help
Yes.
these people get through it and not charge them. It's been such a pleasure having you on this program. I really appreciate it.
Thank
and
you.
appreciate what you're doing. I think you guys are doing an amazing job out there.
Thanks so much.
So, and I'd also like to thank John Stars, our producer, and WWDBTV for allowing me to host this program. If you have any questions or comments, please reach out to me, Stephen at thegiftofgiving.vegas. I'd also like to thank our viewers for tuning in. Appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed this program, and I hope you will join us next week. Please stay safe and be kind in the meantime. And finally, a thanks to our sponsors, Lucia Capital Group, Pacific Coast Capital, and our final sponsor, my business partner for the last 25 years, RJ Champion, whose message will follow right at the end of this program. Bye for now.
Mr. R.J. Champion is proud to sponsor WWDB-TV's series, The Gift of Giving, and wishes the program much success. Congratulations and gratitude to the featured guests and the organizations they represent. Our community is well served by your tireless efforts to make Nevada a better state for all its residents.